What if you could retire with $2 million and never feel like you're running out of money? That number might sound almost too good to be true, especially if you're between 55 and 65 and you're wondering whether your savings are actually enough. You have probably heard very different retirement advice from financial experts. Save $3 million before you even think about retiring. Maybe you have even heard that $4 million would be safer, then supposedly you can finally retire without worrying about money. But here's the problem with those enormous retirement numbers. Those calculations often ignore something incredibly important about retirement income. Your retirement income does not have to come entirely from your investment portfolio. Once you understand that principle, the retirement math starts looking very different. Today, I'm going to show you how $2 million could potentially support a comfortable retirement. But there's an important catch that you need to understand first. You cannot treat that $2 million like one giant pile of money. Instead, you need to give every dollar a specific job. By the end, you'll see why the same $2 million can produce completely different retirement outcomes. Let's begin with a realistic retirement scenario for someone approaching retirement. Imagine that you're 60 years old and ready to leave the workforce. You've worked for several decades and saved consistently throughout your career. You've also managed to avoid accumulating excessive debt before retirement. Now imagine that you have $2 million invested across your retirement and taxable accounts. You want to spend approximately $100,000 every year during retirement. At first glance, that spending target might look extremely dangerous. A simple calculation might tell you that $100,000 divided by $2 million equals a 5% withdrawal rate. Suddenly, you might start thinking that this retirement plan simply cannot work. But that simple calculation is missing one of the most important parts of your retirement story. You are not going to need exactly the same amount from your portfolio forever. Your income sources can change significantly throughout retirement. Your spending can also change significantly throughout retirement. Most importantly, your portfolio does not have to perform the same job for 30 years. So let's rebuild this retirement plan from the ground up. First, we need to talk about Social Security benefits. Suppose our hypothetical retiree waits until age 67 to claim Social Security. Let's assume their Social Security benefit provides approximately $30,000 every year. That means your investment portfolio does not have to produce $100,000 forever. Once Social Security begins, your portfolio only needs to provide approximately $70,000 annually. That creates a completely different retirement planning problem. But there is another important question we need to answer. What happens during the years between age 60 and age 67? This is exactly where our first retirement bucket becomes useful. We're going to create what I call a 7-year retirement bridge. Instead of forcing the entire $2 million to remain aggressively invested, we separate money specifically for those early retirement years. Think of this first bucket as your financial runway. You know exactly where your spending money will come from during those early years. That certainty can become incredibly valuable when the stock market suddenly experiences a major decline. Let's say we dedicate approximately $650,000 to this retirement bridge. That money is not designed to last throughout your entire retirement. Instead, it is specifically designed to carry you from age 60 through age 67. And that distinction is extremely important when evaluating your withdrawal rate. A bucket that is intentionally designed to reach zero should not be judged like a portfolio designed to last indefinitely. Now we can move to our second retirement bucket. This second bucket has a completely different purpose from the first one. We're going to call this one the long-term growth bucket. Its primary job is to fund the later decades of your retirement. Because we don't need to touch most of this money immediately, it has valuable time to grow. That extra time can become incredibly powerful for long-term retirement planning. If part of your portfolio can compound for 7 years before you need it, you're no longer asking investments to solve today's financial problem. Instead, you're allowing time and compounding to solve part of that problem for you. Let's say we allocate approximately $950,000 to this long-term growth portfolio. That leaves us with approximately $400,000 from our original $2 million. And this is where many retirement plans make a potentially serious mistake. They try to squeeze every remaining dollar into the investment portfolio. Instead, let's create a third and separate safety bucket. Think of this as your financial protection and flexibility reserve. This money could cover healthcare surprises, home repairs, family emergencies, or unexpected expenses. Let's allocate approximately $400,000 to this safety bucket. Now let's step back and look at our complete $2 million retirement structure. We have approximately $650,000 for the early retirement bridge. We have approximately $950,000 for long-term portfolio growth. We also have approximately $400,000 reserved for safety and financial flexibility. Together, those three buckets represent our entire $2 million retirement portfolio. But notice something important about this approach. We never simply said that you should withdraw $100,000 every year from one account. Instead, we created a structured retirement income system. And a structured system can often be more useful than relying on one simple percentage. Now let's fast forward our hypothetical retiree to age 67. Social Security finally begins providing approximately $30,000 every year. Your investment portfolio now needs to provide approximately $70,000 annually. Something else has also happened during those 7 years. Your long-term growth portfolio has had valuable time to compound. Meanwhile, your bridge bucket has been steadily doing the job it was designed to do. Your safety bucket has also remained available for unexpected emergencies. This is where our retirement strategy becomes much more interesting. The question is no longer simply whether $2 million can survive 30 years. The better question is, which dollars need to survive and which dollars are supposed to be spent? That is a completely different way of thinking about retirement. But before we celebrate, we need to stress test this retirement plan. Retirement is not a spreadsheet where every assumption works perfectly. Financial markets do not deliver identical returns every single year. Inflation also does not cooperate with your carefully designed retirement plan. And nobody knows exactly when the next major recession will arrive. Imagine that you retire at age 60 and the stock market falls 30% during your first year. That situation could feel terrifying if your entire retirement depended on selling stocks immediately. But what happens if several years of your spending are already separated from the stock market? You would not necessarily have to sell depressed investments just to pay your regular living expenses. That is the real purpose of having a retirement bridge. It gives your long-term investment portfolio something incredibly valuable. It gives your portfolio time to recover and continue compounding. And time can become one of the most valuable financial assets you have during retirement. This matters especially because early investment losses can seriously damage a retirement portfolio. This problem is commonly known as sequence of returns risk. The order of your investment returns can matter almost as much as your average investment return. A terrible market during your first retirement years can create much more damage than the same decline occurring decades later. That is why I do not want you thinking about retirement as one enormous investment account. Instead, I want you thinking about 3 different financial jobs. You need money that will be spent relatively soon. You need money that will be invested for the later stages of retirement. And you need money that may never be touched unless something unexpected happens. Now let's talk about another factor that can completely change your retirement calculations. That factor is taxes. A $100,000 paycheck is not the same thing as $100,000 of retirement spending. When you're working, part of your income can disappear through payroll taxes. You may also be contributing significant amounts toward your 401k every year. You may be paying commuting costs and other work-related expenses. And you may be paying income taxes before your paycheck ever reaches your bank account. Retirement income can look dramatically different depending on where your money comes from. Depending on the account, not every dollar you withdraw will necessarily be taxed the same way. A taxable brokerage withdrawal can contain both your original cost basis and realized capital gains. Qualified Roth withdrawals can potentially be completely tax-free. Social Security benefits can also be partially taxable depending on your total income. This means replacing your old salary dollar for dollar may not actually be necessary. Your goal during retirement is not necessarily to replace your previous paycheck. Your real goal is to replace the lifestyle that your paycheck was supporting. Those two numbers can be dramatically different for many retirees. And there is another retirement expense that people often underestimate. That expense is healthcare. If you're retiring before Medicare eligibility, you need a specific plan for those years. Even after Medicare begins, healthcare expenses do not magically disappear. That is another reason I like maintaining a dedicated safety bucket. It prevents every unexpected medical expense from immediately becoming a crisis for your investment portfolio. Now here's where the $2 million retirement number becomes especially interesting. I'm not saying that $2 million guarantees a successful retirement for everyone. No portfolio size can provide that kind of guarantee. I'm saying that $2 million could potentially be enough when your retirement plan reflects your actual circumstances. That means considering your income sources, spending pattern, taxes, healthcare, and risk tolerance. And that distinction matters enormously when you're deciding whether you can retire. Two people can have exactly the same $2 million portfolio. One person might feel completely financially secure. The other person might feel extremely nervous about running out of money. The difference may not be the size of their portfolio. The difference may be how that portfolio has been structured. Let's make our hypothetical scenario even more conservative. Suppose your long-term growth portfolio performs worse than expected. Suppose inflation remains higher than expected for several years. Suppose your healthcare expenses also end up costing more than planned. This is exactly where financial flexibility becomes extremely valuable. Maybe you spend $100,000 during your first several active retirement years. Later, perhaps your spending falls closer to $90,000 annually. Eventually, your annual spending could potentially fall closer to $80,000. Your retirement spending does not necessarily follow one perfectly straight line. Your lifestyle and spending patterns can change as you get older. You might travel much more during your 60s than you do during your 80s. You might also spend less on certain activities as your priorities change. That is another reason a fixed withdrawal percentage can sometimes oversimplify real retirement life. Your retirement is not a machine that follows one mathematical formula. Your retirement is a life that changes as you move through different stages. Now I want you to ask yourself one important question. What if you don't actually need $100,000 every year? What if your mortgage has already been completely paid off? What if your children are already financially independent? What if you are no longer contributing money toward retirement accounts? What if your commuting expenses have completely disappeared? What if your actual annual lifestyle costs closer to $75,000? That single change could dramatically alter your retirement calculations. A portfolio that feels too small for a $100,000 lifestyle can look very different at $75,000. And that is why I would never begin retirement planning by asking how much money you should have. I would begin by asking what your actual lifestyle costs every year. Then I would determine where that retirement income will come from. After that, I would separate your essential expenses from flexible expenses. Only after answering those questions should you calculate the portfolio you actually need. Now let's return to our hypothetical $2 million retiree. At age 60, this retiree has three clearly defined financial buckets. At age 67, Social Security becomes another important source of retirement income. The bridge bucket has already performed the job it was designed to perform. Meanwhile, the long-term growth portfolio has had several years to compound. The safety bucket also remains available for healthcare and unexpected expenses. Suddenly, that original $2 million does not look nearly as fragile. It has a structure that gives every dollar a specific purpose. It has multiple potential sources of retirement income. It also has flexibility built into the plan. Most importantly, it has a strategy for dealing with bad investment markets. And that is the real lesson I want you to remember. Retirement is not about finding one magical number that guarantees everything will work. Retirement is about creating enough financial flexibility that you never have to make desperate decisions. The worst retirement plan is not necessarily the one with the smallest portfolio. Sometimes the worst plan is the one that forces you to sell investments at exactly the wrong time. It could also force you to take on debt when financial markets are already falling. Or it could leave you panicking because you don't know where next year's income will come from. A well-designed retirement plan should make bad markets uncomfortable. It should not allow those bad markets to become financially catastrophic. And that is why I believe the $2 million retirement target deserves a much closer look. You should not simply divide $100,000 by one withdrawal percentage and stop there. The math becomes more complicated when you account for your entire financial situation. But that more detailed calculation can actually produce a more encouraging answer. If you're between 55 and 65 right now, don't automatically assume you need $3 or $4 million before considering retirement. Instead, run the numbers based on your own circumstances. Calculate your actual annual spending before choosing a retirement target. Estimate your Social Security benefits as realistically as possible. Separate your short-term money from your long-term investment money. Build a dedicated reserve for healthcare and unexpected expenses. Stress test your retirement plan against several different market scenarios. And most importantly, give every dollar a specific job. Because the real question is not simply whether you have $2 million. The better question is whether your $2 million can actually do what you need it to do. And that is a much more powerful way to think about retirement. If this changed the way you think about your retirement number, share this video with someone approaching retirement. Especially share it with someone who still believes they need millions more before they can retire. And before you make your final retirement decision, remember one important thing. You don't need perfect investment markets to build a successful retirement. You also don't need perfect timing to feel financially prepared. And you certainly don't need one enormous pile of money doing every job. What you need is a retirement plan that gives your money different jobs at different stages of your life. That is how $2 million could potentially become enough.